Thank you, Mataji. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraet Shinvatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridayantosto Bhadrani Vidunoti Sruhutsatam Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, The Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 28, Puranjana becomes a woman in the next life. Verse 47, Atmanam Sochati Dinam Bandhum Viklavashrubihi Sthanavasitya Vipine Shuswaram Prarurodhasa. Synonyms: Atmanam, about herself. Sochati, lamenting. Dinam, wretched. Abandhum, without a friend. Viklava, broken-hearted. Ashrubihi, by tears. Sthanav, her breasts. Asichya, wetting. Vipine, in the forest. Suswaram, loudly. Prarurodha, began to cry. Sa, she. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Chandarvind Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Being now alone and a widow in that forest, the daughter of Vidarbha began to lament, incessantly shedding tears, which soaked her breasts and crying very loudly. Purport: figuratively, the queen is supposed to be the disciple of the king. Thus, when the mortal body of the spiritual master expires, his disciples should cry exactly as the queen cries when the king leaves his body. However, the disciple and spiritual master are never separated because the spiritual master always keeps company with the disciple as long as the disciple follows strictly the instructions of the spiritual master. This is called the association of Vani. Physical presence is called Vapu. As long as the spiritual master is physically present, the disciple should serve the physical body of the spiritual master, and when the spiritual master is no longer available, no longer physically existing, the disciple should serve the instructions of the spiritual master. Verse 48, Uttishta Uttishta Rajarshi Imamadu me kalam Dasubhya Shatra Bandhubhyo Vibhyantim Patu Maharhasi. Synonyms: Uttishta, please get up. Uttishta, please get up. Raj Rishi, O saintly king. Imam, this earth. Udadhi, by the ocean. Mekhalam, surrounded. Dasubhya, from the rogues. Shatra Bandhubhya, from the unclean kings. Bibhyantim, very much afraid. Patum, to protect. Arhasi, you ought. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Chandravind Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O best of kings, please get up. Get up. Just see this world surrounded by water and infested with rogues and so-called kings. This world is very much afraid and it is your duty to protect her. Purport: whenever an Acharya comes following the superior order of the spiritual personality of Godhead or his representative, he establishes the principles of religion as enunciated in Bhagavad Gita. Religion means abiding by the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Religious principles begin from the time one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is the Acharya's duty to spread a bona fide religious system and induce everyone to bow down before the Supreme Lord. One executes the religious principles by rendering devotional service, specifically the nine items like hearing, chanting, and remembering. Unfortunately, when the Acharya disappears, rogues and non devotees take advantage and immediately begin to introduce unauthorized principles in the name of so called Swamis, yogis, philanthropists, welfare workers, and so on. Actually, human life is meant for executing the orders of the Supreme Lord, and this is stated in Bhagavad Gita 9.34. मन मना भव मद भक्तो मद्याजी माम नमस्कुरु मम इवस्यसि युक्त वैभम आत्मनाम मत परायणः. Engage your mind always in thinking of me and become my devotee. Offer obeisances and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. The main business of human society is to think of the spiritual personality of Godhead at all times, to become his devotees, to worship the Supreme Lord and bow down before him. The Acharya, the authorized representative of the Supreme Lord, establishes these principles, but when he disappears, things once again become disordered. The perfect disciples of the Acharya try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of the spiritual master. At the present moment, practically the entire world is afraid of rogues and non devotees. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement is started to save the world from irreligious principles. Everyone should cooperate with this movement in order to bring about actual peace and happiness in the world. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश थारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. Thank you for all assembled Vaishnavas for giving me the opportunity to speak today. This will be for my own purification, and today I'll be summarizing the verses based on the commentary from senior Vaishnavas. I beg for forgiveness if I make any mistakes. So, starting with a summary and a short recap of what we've been hearing in the recent verses. Puranjana's attachment to his wife at the time of death causes him to take birth as a daughter of King Vidarbha, as Vaidarbhi. She gets married to King Maladhwaja, who had perfected his understanding of soul, its purpose and its association with Supersoul, and he received direct instructions from Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vaidarbhi accepts him as all in all, as supreme. She remains engaged in his service and lived a life of full renunciation. King Maladhwaja, while performing severe penance away from his kingdom in the forest, leaves his body and leaving Vaidarbhi alone in the forest, creating her great anxiety and distress. Vaidarbhi begins to lament, shedding tears of separation and crying very loudly. So this is what we have heard so far, and from the verses today 47, 48, I'll summarize that. So similarly, we can see in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjun is lamenting in front of Krishna, asking what will happen if all my relatives, my superiors are killed. It will be very sinful, as everybody will then be lamenting for their dear ones, after which Krishna clarifies that, O Arjuna, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who lament are wise, lament neither for the living nor the dead. So Srila Prabhupada explains that Vaidarbhi is deservingly right in lamenting and crying for her husband, just as a disciple should cry when spiritual master leaves his body. But both are never separated as long as disciple strictly follows the instructions of the spiritual master, which can be understood as association of Vani, which is the words of the spiritual master, whereas the physical presence of spiritual master is called Vapu. But if a devotee thinks that, hey, anyways, my spiritual master has left, so what's the use of the spiritual practice now? Let me also leave the path of devotional service. Then this will result in unhappiness for the spiritual master. Another spiritual understanding which we come often across is the basic fact that under the illusion of Maya or Durga Devi, we think that we are this body and the bodily relations are ours or our mind. So on this topic, Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, as it is 2.20, he says, Ajo nitya sasvato ayam purano na hanyate hanyamane sarire, which is soul is unborn, eternal, ever existing and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. Now getting back to the Vaidarbhi's condition, in her deep cry, she approaches her husband's body and uh, offers prayers to her husband. उत्तिष्ठ उत्तिष्ठ राज ऋषि इमामु दधि मेखलाम तस्युभ्यो शत्र बंधुभ्यो विभ्यंतिम पातुम अर्हसि. O best of kings, please get up. It is your duty to protect the earth, which is surrounded by water and infested with rogues, making the world very fearful. So, similarly, Srila Prabhupada explains that primary duty of humans is to become a perfect devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, who sent his representatives, just like he sent dear Srila Prabhupada as his authorized representative to establish Krishna consciousness, which simply put is to abide by the instructions of the Lord. Dharma begins when one takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. One of the Prabhupada disciples also explains that soon after Srila Prabhupada departed, the entire congregation was very gloomy and disturbed. And every meeting that they had, there were concerns about what will be the future of the movement, which is, in this verse is also touched upon by saying there'll be, there's disordered that prevails everywhere. Um, so while they were unsure as to how the movement will go forward, there was one sentiment that was common, and the theme that was arising was that as long as everyone follows the basic that Srila Prabhupada taught us, and we distribute his books, we will be fine. Now, Srila Prabhupada's disciples, they felt a sense of emptiness after his departure from his material world, and as they were dependent on his physical presence and more also on his instructions that Srila Prabhupada gave during his lectures. Those lectures, the instructions that would come from those lectures, they would reverberate through the whole world. An instruction that Srila Prabhupada would, again, based on time, place, and circumstance, would send through a letter, it would also reverberate across all North America, especially. And such was the effect that Prabhupada instructed once to Chicago Temple that devotees should go for book distribution, and all devotees actually should go for book distribution, and just one or two devotees can stay behind for deity seva. And as soon as the word spread, all these temples started emptying, except for one or two devotees that would stay back. And this was for his pleasure to follow his instructions, and for his happiness. Um, so, as a follower of Srila Prabhupada, we have a great responsibility to be a good example. We should be able to take some burden of the society by accepting some responsibility for some service. Guide the people who are seeking knowledge or seeking help in spiritual life. If one can create facility the way Srila Prabhupada created facilities for doing devotional service, that will be very nice. One has to meditate what talent and quality I have, for which I can contribute to the Sankirtan Yajna. And to the degree that one is able to keep the purpose of the Acharya intact. To the same degree, one will receive mercy. And to the degree that one is deviated from the purpose, one is basically taking himself or herself away from the mercy. When acharyas depart after establishing the religious principles, Srila Prabhupada expects the devotees to sincerely follow the instructions of the spiritual master and cooperate in order to continue the Krishna consciousness movement and save it from the opportunists who resurface to misguide and exploit innocent human beings in the name of religion. So, one may ask, how can I contribute? What can I do to protect Krishna consciousness movement? That would be an obvious question that would come forward on anybody's mind. And there are many ways, but one of the effective ways is to try and protect the faith of a person who can be either be a neophyte or could be a beginner or it could be somebody already practicing. Now, to uphold such person's faith, it takes persistent efforts to administer care for a person who are soft targets for exploitation during when the adversity strikes. Adversities can be many, right? Could be a job loss or facing a real life crisis, having a financial crisis, having health issues, or as simple as somebody trying to find a compatible life partner, right? There can be many situations in the congregation. One may not have to take, one may, again, these are just some of the situations, and this could not be the reasons why somebody would take to Krishna consciousness. But to protect, if one can help, we should come forward. During those testing times, taking care of devotees is required to help uphold the faith of the Lord, and which correlates to having a thriving congregation, which can boldly practice and confidently preach the glories of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada used to quote an example of a night sky full of clouds and stars and a moon that is sometimes shining and because of the clouds coming in the way. Similarly, in Kali Yuga, we see that many spiritual organizations are existing and new, day by day new are coming up. And instead of giving the right knowledge of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, they will promote either sattvic life, suggest that be vegetarian, be good to others, have nice relationships. And Srila Prabhupada used to compare these organizations with stars who cannot give the right knowledge that humanity deserves. But amongst the cloud, the full bright moon comes out of the clouds, which is synonymous to ISKCON, which is giving hope and distributing the love of Godhead in the degraded age of Kali. That being said, I would like to conclude my summary. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhu